Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in, golf fans. Coming to you live this Monday evening from the Preferred Lines studio. My name is Joe Idoni. At Tour Picks is the place to find me on Twitter. You have stumbled your way onto the Preferred Lines podcast. You're a part of the show. I've got a guest coming on. We're going to recap the U.S. Open, get into a little Travelers. Let's do it.
Full 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
What a week it was in North Carolina. That was one of the most amazing, fantastic golf tournaments that I've ever seen. From a picks perspective, I was on the wrong side of it. We're here to recover. There ain't no rest for the wicked on the PGA Tour. We are right back at it with a signature event this week at the Travelers Championship. One of the best events on the PGA Tour. It's kind of a shame, honestly, that it got this spot on the schedule. It's the second most well-attended event. The players love it every year. It's going to be a fantastic field. I still think we get a good event, but it'd be nice to have a little breather. That's not the case. If you want a little breather from golf content, don't check out the Rotoballer team because we are crushing things over there. If you want to join the team, the promo code is LINES, LINES. That'll get you full access to everything that I do. You're going to get all 5 pieces of articles. You're going to get the long shots video, plus access to every single other member of the team. I posted some matchups pre-tournament that I really liked last week at the U.S. Open that went 3-0. Good evening to everyone. I hope that you join and will consider being a part of that Rotoballer team with us. Joanne, Ted, love to see you guys on a Monday night. First, before we get into the Traveler stuff this week, I got to recap an incredible U.S. Open, like I said, and there's no other person I'd rather do it with than the gentleman that I'm bringing on to the show tonight, the major man of mystery. You saw him probably on your TV screens yesterday with the final group. You've seen him a number of times. Welcome into Preferred Lines, my friend Tommy Lippard. What's up, brother?
All good, man. Thanks for having me on the show with you, Joe.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's start with a hard hitter out the gates. Tell the people kind of who you are and what you do out there.
Yeah, so, ever since 2017, I've been going to a lot of tour events. So I've made basically my living in sports gaming. So just through connections and those types of things, I know, not in golf. I don't, solicit with golf or anything like that or whatever. But other sports, it's a lot like the stock market. So I don't really care as much about the result of a game as which way the number's going. If you're in the stock market, if you knew something was going to be worth something, you'd buy it. You sell it, and you're done with it. So I make my living really doing it that way. I've been around golf for a long time, ever since I've been little. One of my best friends, John Passmore, grew up as a great golfer in New York State. Thought we'd get on the PGA Tour, moved out to Vegas together. We were on Butch Harmon Tour back in, I think, 03 it was, against Scott Piercy, some of these guys that are out there playing. So I've always had a connection to golf. As soon as, a lot of the legalized states for gambling went out there, I became more interested in it because, the players are, things can influence them out there. So I've got to gain trust and do a lot of things out there. So I've been walking with the players. They know who I am and those kinds of things. The last year or so, I've always had somewhat of a soft spot for Dustin Johnson. So I've, kind of gone a lot with him, just working on, going out and I'm competitive by nature. I mean, that's how I am, Joe. I mean, it's, I've met Tiger Woods, Patrick Mahomes, and probably Wayne Gretzky, knowing him. The only 3 people I've ever been around that are more competitive than me. So I like the competitive nature of it. But, going with these kinds of stuff or whatever. And then, I help out the players on the golf course. You saw over on 8 with Bryson on TV. I walk up there and, you got policemen, you've got, gallery, things that need to be moving and all this kind of stuff. Well, you know me, Joe, when I come in there, I'm not messing around. I mean, we're moving stuff. So, I got
you're getting people out of the way, right? You're making sure that when the player arrives at his ball, that he doesn't have to spend the first 60 seconds moving fans out of the way. You're kind of the eyes out there for him. And I know that's what you've always done. And the players know you. The players recognize you. The players respect you. Even the police officers and the security people, you're there all week. My boy Matt says he's seen you at every practice round. You're at every practice round of every major for probably the last 10 years. Like, this is kind of what you do. And when people see you at a PGA Tour tournament, they know exactly what to expect, right?
Yeah, that's right. And reverting back to what you just mentioned with Bryson in that situation, I get everything settled. And once everything's settled, then I want the player and the caddy to take control from that point, and I'm out of the way. That's how I like to do my things, because it's settled in the ropes, and the best players should have the opportunity to do that. While we're on that really quick, I will say this. PGA Tour events, the U.S. Open, you're in the media. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on. It should be settled in the field of play. I'm not going to mention names in the media that are dragging up groups, holding up people that are paying for tickets on rope lines. A lot of nonsense out there. That stuff ticks me off more than anything. Yeah. So stuff like that, I see, you know me, Joe, I see everything out there. So I just wanted to quickly put that out there. But yes.
Yeah, well, there were some, let's just sort of address it, because there were some people speculating. I heard a podcast where they were bringing you up this morning that you're out there scouting the course for players, and you're not, are you talking to them? Are you doing anything other than just making sure that they have decent playing conditions and they're able to see their shot clearly?
Well, that's exactly what I do for all of them except for Dustin. So when I'm out, you know, in the morning, I got it, you know, Thursday and Friday, we had I think it was maybe 7:50 tee time. I can't remember. Anyways, the gates open at 6. So I came in, the ride lift drop off was behind 5, the par 5. Boom, I'm in through the gates at exactly 6. 4 screens right there. I'm videoing it, telling Dustin basically how I would play the hole, yada, yada, yada. I can give as much information as I want visually not to Dustin. I don't really, it's more Austin. You know, I take him under my wing and those types of things and whatnot. So how would I play this? Where would I leave it? I see Firm this year. They've had that roller out there probably 6 times in the front edge. It's going to be coming in and hitting out there. It's like a trampoline. So I'm trying to, you know, concrete. You can't be over here. This is the high side. You know, do that. I know Pinehurst number 2, you know, pretty well. My buddy out there has a part of it. So I'm basically strategically telling you how to play the golf course from the get-go. Once things start, I'm the complete opposite. I don't like to talk to players. Players, noise, that's all noise to them. I love nonverbal communication. If, you know, you had a bogey and you just teed off and ripped driver, why are you walking up so slow? Get your fucking ass, get moving up there. Good body language. Let's get going. You know what I mean? Like all these little things, guys in the schmutz over there in the wiry grass for a couple minutes. Where's your mind at? Relax, settle down. You know, doing these types of things. Don't have to tell them, but, you know, it's verbal communication, being calm, being relaxed. So a lot of those things I believe in big time.
Yeah, and it's no different than the players watching on TV before they go off to tee off. But our boy Keith's here. Keith knows better than anybody that being at an event is a little different than watching it on TV at the morning. And I think that that's kind of what you're out there doing, is giving them, like, you know, this is a spot you don't want to leave it on 6. You're dead behind the green. These type of little insights that you're just sort of passing along to the caddy, being the eyes and ears out on the course before the players get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I like to do as well, too, is we haven't walked a lot of, you know, rounds together, but the top players. What I like to do is when we're done on, let's say, 12, whatever the hole is, and we're going off on a par 4, typically 99% of the time, I'm walking down the fairway in front of the players, because you know how I am. I'm always out in front of everything. So I'll walk down 50, 100 yards, and all I'm doing is getting myself in a stationary position and leaving myself there and allowing the players to do. What that does for them, in my mind, I believe it calms them. The shot is difficult enough already. There's noise, there's different atmospheres. Everywhere that you walk in is changing all the time in a wind direction. Now this guy's phone went off or whatever. If I'm up there in a constant position all of the time, it's a routine that never changes. And I truly believe in that.
Well, I wanted to ask you specifically kind of about Bryson, because you were with Dustin and around Dustin when he was the #1 player in the world. You were there, and I sent you pictures of screenshots, and I think I may have it here with Brooks last year holding up the 5 as he sort of walked off 18. Those two guys, to me, and I don't know either of them, but they're very, stoic, right? They're unflappable. They're almost like a tunnel vision out there where they're so laser focused on their game that nothing's going to affect them from the outside world. Bryson felt different. It felt like he was paying attention to everything that was going on around him. He was acknowledging fans. He was talking to them. He was looking at them. He was fist bumping them. He was like part of the show almost. Whereas those other two guys, did it feel that same way? Did you feel that inside the ropes being with him, that he was a little bit more engaged with the audience around him than what you've seen from some of these other players, especially in a big time tournament down the stretch on Sunday?
Well, here's the deal. Every single one of these players have different personalities. All right, so I've got to adjust on the fly to what's going on. Tiger likes to feed off of the emotion. He loves it. These types of stuff or whatever. Bryson's the same way. With knowing him and his caddy a little bit and having some contact and stuff with them, my advice for Bryson is, you just want to use these people, use them as fuel, feed off of them. You know what I mean? That works for Bryson. You know what I mean? That gets him positive. That gets him in a situation where he needs to be, going and doing stuff, whatever. There's other players, and I'm not going to bring up names, where they need to be much calmer, much more relaxed in situations, staying more, as you mentioned, more tunnel vision. You know what I mean? Not worrying about stuff or whatever, and the dodgy eyes and their minds all over the place and stuff like that. They've got to be more subdued, and they need to be more, chill or relaxed in situations. So to answer your point, that may be BK, that could be more Dustin, those types of stuff or whatever. They're fine with, they've been through a lot of those things. They know, they've been through the gauntlet more or whatever. And reverting back to Bryson, where he's playing now and, stuff or whatever, he's more comfortable in his own skin as a human being. That's clear. You know what I mean? So that's going to make you a happier person as well, too. You know what I mean? You remember the feud and stuff, what's going on with BK. And, I'm not saying there's bullying on either side or whatever. But that's an uncomfortable situation for people. And while we're on that subject, mental health is enormous. You know what I mean? So these people, I even saw that you put something about Rory, not showing up for Travelers. He needs mentally to break away. So it doesn't matter what you think, they think, this person thinks or whatever. Everyone's different. He doesn't need to go out there and, finish second or, pick up. He don't care about the money. Most of these guys, they get the money. That's all a reward. That's not what they play for. You know what I mean? So I'm a believer in, I guess, rambling on a little bit, but those are things that I'm very high on.
No, yeah, and I guess what I mean was, Brooks and DJ were so unflappable in ways that I didn't necessarily give Bryson credit for, because he seemed to engage and be understanding of everything that was going on around him. But man, was he unflappable. Like, the up and down on 8 was unbelievable. I mean, you were right there.
That's a crazy shot left of the green, because people don't understand how severely he's pitching off of to an upslope to a firm, basically like trampoline type of tabletop up there.
It was
and
unreal.
He's throwing it up there to makeable range. The average Joe Schmo is sculling it over the green, chilling it. I mean, it's crazy. You know what I mean? So, if I were in that situation, even caddying or setting it up, I might have him hammer it up the hill and blow it by the pin and have a 30-footer coming back, and let's just take bogey and get out of here. The second shot that he hit on that hole, you saw me on the coverage. All right. Yeah. I'm standing there kneeling there. If he pushes it right, it's literally drilling me in the face, could kill me. I've got a cameraman literally behind me that has no clue what's going on, that's asking me to move. You know me, Joe. I'm gonna turn around. I'm not moving till he hits the shot. You think, I'll rip your head off before I'm moving over here. So that shot coming out of the trees, being able to what I'm doing up there is I'm moving people for him to get it out on the line, but he also needs to visually see the green. So there's people way up there that I've got to move behind there and stuff or whatever. That shot coming out of the trees was an excellent shot.
Yeah, it really was. And even to start the round, like, I don't know if you caught this, but because it was mostly covered on the coverage, but he cracked his driver on the range minutes before he went out. He said that he flattened the face of it. I assume that means it was broken to some degree, and he popped in a new driver. He said he got 4 swings off with it and went out. But those are the type of little things that can really fuck with a lot of guys. Like that's a built-in excuse for a number of players, and being on the wrong side of 8 and all these little things that you look back that happened throughout the round. 3 putts. There were opportunities for him to lose a little bit of focus and play an excuse and be like, play the woe is me card. And the fact that he rose above that and didn't once seem to even factor it in when he was out on the course, I thought was one of the most impressive things of the day.
No question. And another thing, I mean, you've seen, with the new driver, he didn't drive it well. And
No.
if I was caddying for him, and people that think I solicit for players or whatever, I would say probably after 10, I would have ran out on the green and tackled him and told him to hit 3 with the rest of the back 9. Because what happens out at Pinehurst is there's a lot of elevations that you're hitting off tee boxes. There's no trees there. So as soon as the ball comes literally off the club face, if it's a left or right wind, it hits it immediately. So it throws it offline. And as Bryson's hitting it and doing these kinds of stuff or whatever, it doesn't matter how good you hit it. As soon as it gets offline, it's gone. So what I like to do for Dustin and, with his brother or whatever, I like to call like a Vegas ball. So like, you're not trying to pound driver here at all. I saw Rory do it off of number 12. What you're doing is you're hitting a low bullet driver and picking your tee up. It never gets offline. That's what I would have been having Bryson do with 3 wood on the entire back 9, because the driver, there's just not enough room down there. What the roller is up on the green, how they can firm up surfaces?
Yes.
They're doing that on the fairways. Corners of fairways that are bouncing off into the shit, whatever. I mean, where are you going to hit the driver? Where's it landing? You know what I mean? It doesn't. Where are you stopping the ball? So, I mean, just strategically, but with him bombing it out there 340 in the air and whatever, he's taking his chances of blowing it down there anyways for a lie, maybe potentially sitting in the fairway. But personally, for me, I would have been having him hit that 3 wood the same way he hit it off the drivable par 4 every single time on the back 9.
Yep, and he crushed it right in the middle of the green on that drivable par 4 as well. So you've been doing this since the merger, basically, where you've gone to almost every major, correct? Do you feel fans are starting to come around and treat the live players differently? Was there ever any animosity to begin with toward these guys? Has anything changed from, let's say, the U.S. Open 2 years ago to the U.S. Open that you were just walked all 4 days at Pinehurst from a fan perspective?
From the fans' perspective?
Yes.
I would, yeah. I mean, when we were at the PGA Championship, there's no ifs, ands, or buts who everybody was behind. It was Bryson. So, I mean, this is, the last major and stuff or whatever. And you being in the media has completely, they've gotten way too involved with this. You know what I mean? First of all, the players are the boss. The media is not the boss. So, I mean, once you start ticking people off and doing these kinds of stuff or whatever, are there some hard feelings still, between the fans and some of the players or whatever? I mean, yeah, sure, potentially. But, again, like, Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson, everything he's done for the game. Sure, they're being rewarded for what they've done, but they're also paving and creating more for the players that are still on the PGA Tour. That's what people don't understand in my mind. And I will say one more thing about this.
Yeah.
Phil Mickelson's his father, was, I think, in the Navy. He was a huge, did a lot for this country. You're going to tell me he's not an American? First of all, Phil Mickelson doesn't need to be told how to be an American. I mean, that's absolutely, completely absurd, and I know you've been blocked by Brandel and certain things. I stay out of a lot of that type of stuff or whatever, but you can't judge people in today's world, Joe. You're a little younger than me. What I believe in, I can't really voice as much in today's generation because these people, the kids and stuff are completely different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, so the fans, I don't know. You tell me. I don't. I mean, there's some guys in the crowd.
You can feel it watching it on TV. That like they're starting. 2 years ago, I can't imagine this. Like he was the fan favorite. He was the show at the last 2 majors, and his willingness to sort of embrace the fans. And I think a lot of these guys, I think more people were upset about some of the early narratives that were pushed by some players of we're doing this to grow the game and that kind of stuff. This is growing the game. Like what Bryson did, carrying that trophy around, letting the fans touch it.
Yes.
doing all the media interviews, being fun, being on YouTube, opening up a foundation and opening up things for underprivileged kids to get into the game. That's growing the game. And I think that he's slowly winning people over. I wonder, let me ask you this, because you go to pretty much all the live events. You're in Nashville now. You told me earlier you're going to be out on the course tomorrow with Chikara.
Yeah, I like you, Jenny. I'm gonna see if I can get out with the practice round with him. Yeah, yeah.
So do you think there's anything with either the setup or the structure of live or the schedule that is allowing these players to be better prepared either mentally or physically for majors? Like when you're within camp, Dustin Johnson, is he more fresh for these majors? Is he more focused in on these 4 weeks a year now that he doesn't have the grind of the PGA Tour schedule? Do you think it's an advantage potentially playing on live with these 4 events?
Well, I mean, for Dustin, I mean, he's had a great career. Sometimes expectations can be difficult, so I don't personally know how he, handles everything. I do with knowing I walk Paulina, Janet, they're always asking me where to go to ropes and stuff. And, which kind of, I love them, but I'm focusing on what I'm doing out there. I'd rather not be talking to them and whatever, in those situations. So I think Dustin's life he's happier than he's ever been. I will say this, that, there's some people out there that think he doesn't care or whatever. That's complete bullshit. His routine is fantastic. Unfortunately, this week, Wednesday, he got extremely sick. Couldn't even go into the practice round. That was just shit luck for him. So that happens. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to prevent from getting sick. But the one thing with live that I really, truly believe for a guy like Sergio, other guys, is it's not fake the friendships that these people are really connecting with. You know what I mean? That's real, Joe. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if that can make you feel a little bit more comfortable about who you are walking into events and doing stuff, I do think that can be very helpful. A guy like, potentially like the last one that signed, and I'm not speaking for Rombo, but, things haven't gone his way, of late. Has he not learned how to play golf? I mean, that's absolutely, absurd. That's crazy. He's had a foot injury, played like shit at the Masters. What are you going to do? I do think there is, playing 3 rounds instead of 4. People are like, they can't play 4 rounds. Well, Joe, if you don't get off to a good start in 3 rounds, it's very difficult to win. You know what I mean? It's a shorter sample of having to get out there. So it makes you put your foot on the gas pedal like Bryson did early, and then didn't have his best shit for Sunday, but he had enough of the lead with getting, stepping on it and taking care of it. So I think there's ups and downs, to both, and it just depends really on the individual.
Another question. You were sort of right there in the middle of it. Obviously, let's talk about Rory for a second. The 2 missed shorties. I really thought he lost it, in my opinion. I mean, we're going to look back at the shorties, but he was the 4th worst approach player of the day. He was missing everything right. I'm not a swing expert, but he wasn't committing or finishing his swing. He was leaving it all out there to the right and kept missing greens. But we're going to remember the short miss putt on 18, and that's going to be replayed forever. And as someone who's pretty close to the DJ camp, it brought me back to sort of Chambers Bay. He was able to recover from that, right? And I don't know what are the long-lasting impacts of it, but Oakmont was not too far after that where he got that major championship and everyone started to doubt him. And is this going to haunt him forever, right? This missed short putt to win a U.S. Open, and it ultimately didn't. What do you think is in it for Rory to recover that way? Do you think he'll bounce back quickly like DJ was able to do?
Well, first of all, Dustin, after he lost the U.S. Open, people, think he'd be in a cave. He played 36 holes the next day with his friends. So, I mean, you tell me, like, letting it roll off your shoulder or whatever. Yeah. What you're going to do. Is it life or death? Sure, it feels that way. First of all, when it comes to Rory, as I mentioned before, I walked first 36 holes with Tony Finau, Ludwig, and Dustin. Dustin was sick, didn't feel good, played like shit. He was gone. I know some of these guys through social media, Instagram, that I contact them and, individually, personally. I don't need to expose all that kind of stuff or whatever. Well, I basically told Tony on Friday night that between me and, him, he earned the right for me to walk with him on Friday. So I didn't come out, on Saturday. So I didn't come out on Saturday in Dustin's live gear and stuff. Tony Finau was going out on Saturday with Rory McIlroy. I wore all Nike shit for those guys. Do the same exact stuff that I've done with everything. I've walked with Rory more tournaments than any player that I've ever walked with, and he's lifted more trophies than anybody. If I were to give Rory some advice, it would be this. I understand Brad Faxon's a nice guy and Brandel and all these. Get rid of all of them. It's all noise. I don't want anybody around me when I'm going out and doing my stuff. It's just as simple as that. That's my personal take. You want to keep him on the side and work with him on this. When you come to events, as I mentioned before, what are you doing? Where's your mind at? I don't give a shit where your game's at. Where is your mind at? Yeah. Are you relaxed? Are you looking at cloud tops? Are you chill? Are you nervous? Are you jacked up? Do you want to walk into that? Is there hesitation walking into putts? I haven't watched a lot of coverage, yet. It's on right now. I'll probably get to it shortly and stuff like that or whatever. But I did see Rory walking into a couple of putts, a little bit tension and just with some hesitation. Now, the putt on 18, first of all, on all the golf course inside and out, that is a very difficult putt. What people don't understand at all from that left to right putt is there's multiple things. Not as much up on 18 because it's more of a secluded area, but all throughout the golf course, you've got golf carts driving around, debris, shit all over the place. It's not in the morning when I'm looking at, through the screen, the perfect green, the slickness and stuff. You've got debris, stuff all over the greens. It could have hit a pebble, thrown it off right a little bit. For me, what I personally like to do, especially on the greens this week, what I would have done is I'm finding the high side. That's a left to right putt. So for me personally, if I were giving advice to someone on that putt, I'm putting that putt actually with loft. I'm not trying to roll it over perfect on a line. I'm actually skating it over the bullshit early and then having it feed in from the slope on the right side. He hit a decent putt. I think not decent. I mean, he might have decelled, hit at it a little bit. I don't think he truly had the tunnel vision on the through line for where he wanted to start it with a little loft and coming it in. That's how I would have personally put that. The putt on 16, you'd have to ask him. That may be a little bit of nerves. I went back and looked at that putt. He probably was putting with a little bit loft in the wrong situation there and just jammed it. I mean, he
pulled it. Yeah, he pulled it.
Oh, he didn't he pulled it. You know what I mean? I mean,
and then push the one on 18, which you pull a shorty, and then you got a shorty the next one. It's what happens to everyone.
And they're two different putts, Joe. That one's moving a little bit left. This one's a slick one moving right. So your mind is probably all over the place. One thing that for Rory, walking up to a green like on 18 after he really hit a great third shot down there. You know what I mean? That was an excellent shot, exactly. So now what anytime you're walking up on, you've got grandstands, people yelling at you, breathing, relaxed. You've got to be in control of all those variables because they're coming at you. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to block that out. You've got to be able to put your mind where you want it to be, not where it's going. You need to be able to put your mind where you want it to be. Maybe it's, towel. I like a lot of times when I'm out there waiting, I'm always, toweling off a certain way. It's a way to slow things down. It's a way not to speed things up. So if that's part of your routine, I saw him carrying around a water bottle. That's fine. Whatever's part of your routine to make you feel comfortable in uncomfortable situations is what you need to do. But going back to answer your question with Rory McIlroy, I'm not worried about him at all. Zero. This little break will be fine. It'll be fuel for him for the Open. All right. No disrespect to Rory whatsoever. Up until about a year and a half ago, as much as I've walked, with everybody, Scotty Scheffler right now is the best player in the world. No question. Sure. He's earned that, and that's clear. Depending on the setup or whatnot. Rory, to me, up till about a year and a half ago, was clearly by far the most talented. No one was in his league. There's one player now that I've been watching for the last couple of years that has the most talent. He lifted the trophy this year. That doesn't mean in situations that he's a better player than Rory. Rory has 4 majors and all sorts of other stuff and accolades.
So Bryson's the most talented player in the world, you think?
Oh, not even close.
Okay.
It's not close. I watched Ludwig hit some unbelievable irons on Thursday and Friday, but you want to ask somebody, go ask Victor Hovland. He played with him on the weekend at Valhalla, and he played the first 2 rounds with him this week. You ask Victor what he thinks of Bryson, and he will completely eye roll. I mean, when he's flying you by 60 and you're ripping it, what are you going to do? Don't even look at him. Just play your own game. So, he has shots into the wind. He has drives that can carry stuff. He has all the irons. He's gotten better. I'm not saying short game that he's better than Tiger in his prime or Phil or whatever, but
Sure.
the most talented player with the most shots in his bag, it's not even a question. It's Bryson DeChambeau.
Where does Pinehurst number 2 rank in terms of U.S. Open venues that you've been to? And answer that part, and then I have a follow up. How did you feel about it?
Pinehurst number 2 is the hardest golf course in the world.
Okay. How do the players feel about Pinehurst number 2? Because what was interesting is I think the Wiregrass, and I really enjoyed it from a fan perspective. It added an element of randomness where 2 players, Rory and Bryson, could have a major championship on the line that is equally meaningful for both. They could both hit the almost exact same shot 1 yard apart. One could be screwed, one could not. And that's just random. And that's just chance. The 2 best players for the week ended up being the 2 players at the top of the leaderboard. So I'd argue that over 72 holes, that all kind of washes out. But do the players, from your sense, like that kind of a setup where you don't know until you walk up to a ball whether it's a good shot or a bad shot?
Well, to me, I really don't care because, first of all, I'll give you an example. Number 7 in the final round, Bryson takes driver, okay? Now, first of all, that pin where it is in the practice rounds and stuff back there, we're setting it up. You can hit a wedge shot in there, no problem. It's holding and firm or whatever. If they have the roller up on the green up there, there's no possible way that you're going to be holding the green up there. The pin's in the back right on 7. It's over the bunker. You're coming over it. So Bryson, in this situation, hits an unbelievable drive that catches the fairway. Now, if he doesn't catch the fairway, he can be miles down there, only 60, 80 yards in the Wiregrass. But he has the proper angle to come in on the pin. That's where people don't understand from a strategic standpoint of being in the Wiregrass or not being in the Wiregrass. They're in the Wiregrass on 18 left. That pin over there, you can't miss your drive right to that pin. Where are you going? You know what I mean? If you're going to take the chance of being in the fairway, or you're going to just push it a little and you have no shot, you have to go into the Wiregrass on the left and come in from the angle. Or Bryce and I probably, would have ripped him, taken him and tackled the driver and used the 3-wood up there and still push it up there. So it's a lot of angles, Joe, on how you're coming in. And then it is potluck when it gets in there. But again, you have to strategically be able to have the angles and take the chances of doing things, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Last question, Tom. Given the circumstances and what was at stake, the up and down on 18 from the bunker by DeChambeau, one of the best up and downs you've ever seen?
Oh, without a question, one of the best shots in the history of golf. I mean, listen, here's the deal. I mean, I'm not over there. Yeah, I'm not over there because I really cannot, see the lie and stuff like that. And Bryson has longer clubs. So, I mean, the shot he hit on, the heels coming in or whatever. If I were caddying for him, I probably would have had him come out sideways. I mean, Rory just, I'm not saying he pissed the shot away, but I mean, it wasn't an easy shot, but why not just get into the fairway and stuff a wedge here and we got 15 feet? If not, we're going on to a playoff. But
you mean when he was on the route, instead of getting it in that bunker, okay. Yep.
He's already down there into, chip, wedge range or wedge range or whatever. I mean, you saw what Payne did laying up, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's not giving it away. You know what I mean? What happens if he hits the tree root? Now it stays in the shit. He doesn't have a shot. He's trying to hack it on the green. It's in, you just don't know what's going to happen. So for him to take the risk, and listen, if I'm caddying or whatever, the player's the boss. I'll give him what he wants. He always gets the say. I'm going to tell you, exactly what I think. He wanted to take the shot on, put it into the bunker. Very difficult.
Did it feel like both players were hyper aware of what the other one was doing throughout the day, particularly on the back nine?
There's no golf course in the world that I can even think of that you can see from 11's green on. You can see exactly what they're doing the entire time. 11 comes back with 12, 13's coming out, 12 screens here. Then they're coming back 14. You see them up on the green. They're teeing off 15. Then they're ripping it on. You can see every shot they're playing. So I love that aspect of knowing that, being involved with that, and in that respect, they knew exactly where both of them stood the whole time.
Well, I love talking to you, man. I enjoy our talks every week.
Yeah.
You're a good friend. I always
Yep.
appreciate you making time for me. First time on the show. Thank you for stepping up here. You've been all over Twitter. I don't know. You probably haven't seen. Every time I see you out there, man, you're not one of these guys who's videotaping everything. You're
I
glued
don't bring
into the action
this
with
one
the
thing.
eyeballs.
Joe, this one thing I will say: when I get on the grounds at 6 o'clock and we tee off, I never take my phone out again. You want to know why? It's a distraction to the players. It means your mind's somewhere. And that's what Tiger's trying to teach Charlie. Walk practice rounds with Woods, both of them. Charlie's, he knows who I am. He's observing things. And he's a sponge. You don't need your phone out there. What's your mind doing? I wish people could see through my eyes what I see for an entire tournament. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a distraction. You'll never see my phone out there. I try and stay laser focused on what I'm doing. It's all a routine, and it's all for a reason.
Back on the grind this week in Nashville. Good luck, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, be good.
All right, thanks, Tommy.
See you, buddy.
All right. I mean, you can't ask much more than that. The guy is the man. I appreciate him as always for taking a few minutes to step on the hop on the show with me. All right, let's get into this week. I want to talk a little bit of Travelers. All right, TPC River Highlands. Let's talk a little bit of the course. So originally opened in 1928 as the Middletown Golf Club, moved over to TPC River Highlands in 1984. It is a Pete Dye originally designed course. However, it's been through multiple restorations throughout its time. 1989, Bobby Weed came in with Howard Twitty. They increased the challenge a little bit in to set this thing up to host sort of professional golf tournaments. The most recent renovation came in 2016, right after that season. So this was right ahead of the one where Jim Furyk went ultra low and shot a 58, which is the lowest round ever recorded on the PGA Tour. And what they essentially did, they didn't do a whole lot, but they took the bunkers, some of them away. They made them a little bit smaller, and they added these really steep grass faces to the bunkers, which made you make a decision when you're in them, particularly up on the front side, a decision that our boy Sahith Theegala made incorrectly a few years ago, made double bogey on the last hole as he hit one of those grass faces trying to get it out of the bunker and onto the green. Really requires a lot of decisions, which is what this golf course really brings. It couldn't be more different, I would say, than Pinehurst number 2. It's the shortest course on tour, but it makes you and your caddy make a proper choice off the tee on nearly every tee box. You have to think about what you're doing out here. The 4-inch Kentucky bluegrass rough is no joke. It is thick. It is penal, especially if you miss the green. In some spots, it's nearly a half a shot disadvantage to players. Often requires you to chop it out and kind of hope for a good bunker shot. Hope for a good shot that kind of trundles up there onto the green. Both par 5s on the course, we once again have a par 70, are incredibly short. You're in the fairway. Every player in the field can absolutely get there into. The fairways are wide for a short course. A lot of times you see them really pinched in at the 250-yard mark. They're extremely generous, averaging 38 yards wide. If you hit it further down, you want to get to 300 yards, pinches into sort of the 29-yard mark. So like the mark of great short courses, the majority of them, they encourage players to lay off because they offer more forgiveness off the tee and still likely in most scenarios a wedge ultimately in your hand. 125 to 175 yards is going to be where nearly half the approach shots come in this week. It was that way in 2022. It was that way in 2023. It's a wedge course from there on in. The greens are relatively small, but the greens and regulation rates are high. They don't have those steep runoffs like you saw at Pinehurst number 2. They're relatively receptive, so they play a little bit larger than they may appear in the square footage. If you can hit 14 to 15 greens in regulation, since they are small in size, you're going to have a ton of birdie putts and you're going to make your fair share of them. If you can avoid bogeys, which absolutely kill momentum on this course, you can go incredibly low. Like I said, the lowest course or the lowest round ever shot on the PGA Tour was done so at TPC River Highlands. Here are some of the stats that I'm going to consider: driving accuracy, strokes gained around the green, particularly on courses with thick rough. You're not going to be wanting to look at data from those short grass type lies and fairway tight lies you saw last week at Pinehurst, number 2. Thick, rough bunkers, that's where you got to scramble from. I mentioned the approach yardage, a little bent grass POA mix in terms of the green surfaces and putting. Course history is a nice little thing to look at here, particularly going back the last 6 years since the renovation. Strokes gained off the tee on courses under 7,200 yards, shorter tracks, maybe sprinkle a little bit of Pete Dye in there. That's what I got for the course preview. I'm going to pull up the odds board here, and I'm also going to pull up one of the stat models that I ran since it's just me running with the betting portion of the show this week. Let's do that right now. All right, I'm going to give you a little glimpse behind the old paywall here. My boys over at Bet the Number, I hope they don't mind that I'm sharing my model this week on the website. BetTheNumberGolf.com is where you can find some of this data. Scotty Scheffler is your favorite and the number 1 ranked golfer in my model at plus 360. Xander plus 750. Ludwig third on the, Ludwig is not third on the odds board. That would be Colin Morikawa at 12-1. Ludwig 14-15. Then you get to Victor Cantlay. Let's pull up odds checker here and just shop that around a little bit. Rory obviously withdrew. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in final thoughts. I've had a couple of gut reactions with Rory, and Tom mentioned it, that probably don't align with how I feel, and I'll address that here momentarily. But Rory is no longer in this tournament. I don't really have a ton of interest in Scotty Scheffler. I think he probably could use a nice little breather, maybe a day off, maybe a weekend off. Probably wants to get home and be a dad after 3 weeks on the grind. Winning at Memorial, not playing well at the U.S. Open. I can imagine this is a week where he wants to get a little bit of a breather. Morikawa, great course fit. Hovland, I don't have a ton of interest in here. Cantlay. So I had some interesting data on Cantlay. Are you willing to buy into Patrick Cantlay off of one good week? I'm not so sure. I'm considering it. You know, he went with a new driver, the new Titleist GT2 last week that he bagged for the U.S. Open. Also went back to some old Titleist AP2 irons. New driver in the bag. New Patrick Cantlay. His course history here is as good as nearly any player in the field. Here's his last 5 years. 4th, 13th the year prior, which he was actually in the final pairing that year and finished T13. Was in the final group with Xander, who went along to win. T13 also the year before that, 11th, 15th. That's a solid 5-year run for Patrick Cantlay. Also, Cantlay shot a course record at the time here in 2011 as an amateur. He shot 60 as an AM in this event. That was before Furyk went nuclear with the 58. Number 1 in the course history in the model, like that I mentioned. Best iron week of the year last year. Second best off the tee week, last week at Pinehurst. There are some players that I think could be a little worn down from playing Memorial and then a U.S. Open, who maybe had a little bit of a disappointing result at Pinehurst, where this week really feels like, I got to get up and go back to work. I think Patrick Cantlay is probably a little bit invigorated by what happened. It's the 8th signature event of this year. He's actually played pretty well given where we thought his current form was. He's in the final pairing with a T4 to signature event at the Genesis, a course that he loves, that he has great history at. T3 at the Heritage, where he has crazy good history. Here's another one, another signature event. If he top 5s here, it wouldn't surprise me. But the man right now that I'm betting and I'm going all in on this week is Ludwig Oberg. Like I mentioned, Rory's DOA. Scotty, mentally toast, I think. Xander, love him. 8-1, not for me. Didn't even mention Xander. Just not for me. He could win this week, sure. I'll take Ludwig at double the price. I got a 17-1 before the Rory withdrawal. What else does this guy got to do at this point? He's gaining confidence. He's oblivious to pressure and scar tissue. He's numb to insecurities that I think a lot of these other golfers go through. He's actually going back to a familiar place this week. He played this event last year. I believe this is only the second event that he's going back to, seeing for the second time. The other one was the Arnold Palmer Invitational earlier this year. He played in this event last year, a T25, I think, finish, but headed back, knows the course, understands the surroundings, and he's getting more and more comfortable with his game. think he might be kind of a short course guy. It's weird because you think of him and his unbelievable ability with the driver, but won the RSM Classic where he gained 9 strokes tee to green on a course that we said is going to take the driver out of his hand, right? Second at Pebble Beach, extremely short course. The Players is really short. He gained 12.3 tee to green at the Players. It's like 7,200 yards par 72. That was his best tee to green performance of the season. Valero, he gained 8.1 tee to green. Top 10 at the Heritage. His distancing on short, like this, it almost doesn't make sense, but it kind of does when you think about it. So I mentioned how the fairway narrows, right? 40-yard wide fairway at 250 yards, and you get like a 28-yard wide fairway at 300 yards. Now, the natural thing for most players is the driver is a club with their most dispersion, is they say, let me make the logical move here and let me hit a 240-yard shot to a 40-yard wide fairway and play from the fairway. Well, Ludwig, just like he did at the first hole at Pinehurst number 2, knows that his dispersion with a 3-wood or with the driver is so much tighter that hitting a 29-yard wide fairway is not that big of a deal. And then from that point on, him hitting a wedge versus other guys hitting an 8-iron with the height that he's able to get on the ball is an incredible advantage. He's a really good putter. He struggles around the green, but I think that he finds enough fairways this week. I know that he'll find enough greens in regulation, and it's going to come down to whether or not he makes enough putts to win this event. I think that he does. Ludwig Åberg is my favorite bet of the week. Followed by, I'm going into the 28-1 range, and we're going to take Hideki Matsuyama. He's right there beyond Cantlay. I don't really have a ton of interest in Sam Burns. I know that he shot an incredible final 3 days at the U.S. Open. I don't love the course fit with his inability and lack of accuracy off the tee here. I think Russell Henley makes a very sensible play given his accuracy. Do I trust him to win? No, I don't necessarily trust Fleetwood to win either. Thigala, I'm still struggling behind. Hideki's, it's a good bet at 28-1 with those other guys around him, and I'll tell you why. Let me get to some of my data here that I had on Hideki. One career showing at the Travelers Championship. That's kind of weird. Strange, right? But it felt all day Sunday at Pinehurst number 2 like this was the guy I'm worried about. This is the guy I need to watch. And this is the guy that I'm not going to see a drive from. I'm not going to see an approach from. But all of a sudden, they're going to cut to him making a putt, and he's 2 or 3 back with the whole back 9 to play. It never came to fruition. But he's still playing really well. So he was hurt. There was injury concerns, but then he goes T8 at Jack's Place, and he goes 6th at the U.S. Open. He is a good player on short courses. His iron play has been elite. He's 4th in strokes gained tee to green over the last 30 rounds. The approach play numbers are off the chart. I trust him out of the sand and out of difficult bunkers. And I feel like 28-1 is a very good play for how well that he's actually playing this year. When he tees it up, the results and kind of the proof is in the pudding with a player like Hideki Matsuyama. Okay, moving down the odds board just slightly beyond Fleetwood, you have Tony Finau, who's playing fantastic golf. Tom talked a good bit about Finau. I think there's a lot of room for optimism there. Brian Harman, second best course history in the field that I had. Let me look at the numbers back here at Bet the Number. Harman, T2, T8, T5, cut, T8. Finished 21st at the U.S. Open. That's a pretty good finish for Harman. His numbers aren't great. He's really struggling from the approach numbers and the ranges that you want to look at this week. I'm not huge on Harman winning in an outright price at 45-1. Connors is there, playing great golf. Don't trust him to win. Justin Thomas was playing a lot. I'll say this about Justin Thomas. He was playing a lot worse than this last year. And what did he finish? 9th at this event last year, and it seemed like the writing on the wall was Justin Thomas is completely toast. He had a terrible opening round. I watched every shot of it. He was super sad. I was watching Brooks and Colin Morikawa, and Thomas was really bringing them down. But before that, really played pretty well at Valhalla. The approach numbers have been pretty solid. At least, I'll say this, they're much improved this year from what they were the year prior. Straka, Siwoo, Sungjae, Tom Kim, Keegan, Fitz. These are all guys in that 50-1-ish range. Spieth's 55, Homa 60. All right, guys. I have two bets here. One of them makes sense. One of them, just bear with me. Tom Kim, 55-1 I took. T38 in his debut at this event. Since Valhalla, we're talking 2 major championships on his record. Valhalla US Open, 2 signature events. The Canadian Open, he's finished 26th, 24th, 4th, 43rd, 26th. That's not great, but that's much improved from where he was at prior. And what I'm really impressed by is his improvement with the irons, particularly the short wedges. Gained 4.5 strokes on approach in 2 of his last 3 starts, including at Pinehurst number 2. He's hit 65% of fairways in his last 6 tournaments, which is roughly about 6 or 7% better than field average during those events. So we know he's going to play from the short grass. 3 wins in his PGA Tour career. 3, right? Yeah, 3. Twice at the Shriners. I've played there. TPC Summerlin. Shout out my boy Scott Blumstein. Not a long course. The Wyndham, Sedgefield, not a long course. Short positional tracks that reward accuracy off the tee. You miss off the tee at TPC Summerlin and you're in the rocks and you're in the desert. You miss at Sedgefield and you're toast and you're not going to be able to, accurately hold the greens and give yourself enough birdie putts to go low enough to win. This is a Tom Kim prototypical course. I think that he's playing just good enough to warrant a 55-1 bet. And this guy probably ain't playing good enough to warrant this bet. But I get a little crazy after you lose a ticket like Rory. And I'm going to take a former champion here. Now, we're going back to 2017 when he was probably like the number 1 player in the world here. But I'm going to bet Jordan Spieth. He's been statistically a great putter here. Now, there were a lot of players I was looking at. I was considering Cameron Young, Max Homa. I was considering JT. None of them have putted well enough, and Spieth is a really, really good putter here. Now, he was horrible last week with the putter at Pinehurst, but these are very different greens and a place historically that he can go back to with a little bit of confidence in thought process that he's made them here prior. Want to hear something really weird? This dude's dialed with the driver right now. He's hitting the ball with 180 ball speed, averaging 311 off the tee over his last 24 rounds. That's 10 to 12 yards past tour average. He's one of the longer players at this point, and he's doing so by hitting 68% of fairways in his last 3 events. 9% above tour average. That's better than Colin Morikawa. That's better than Tom Kim. I'm talking about Jordan Spieth. Minus 6.6 putting at Pinehurst. I'm okay if that's the stat that I need to bounce back this week, knowing that he's driving it really good right now, and maybe he can rely on a little bit of old magic. Look, Cantlay did it last week. A simple switch. He was dead. He was playing terribly, and all of a sudden he's right back on a leaderboard. Somebody does it each and every week, and it would not surprise me one bit if it was Jordan Spieth. Great week with his irons at Pinehurst. 5th tee to green in round 4, but was 67th putting. So he was great on approach. He was great off the tee, and he bled it all back with the putter. If his name wasn't Spieth and you just looked at those numbers of a guy who's been crushing it off the tee and on approach, let me pull up. Just bear with me a second here. Let me look at his profile. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. Look at these numbers off the tee for Jordan Spieth, right? Now, you take a player with that type of ability off the tee recently, you stack them with a 5.8 approach week and minus 6.6 putting. And if you just ignore this part here where it's showing you that that's Jordan Spieth and you see the ball speed and you see the accuracy numbers, you'd be frothing to take this guy the following week. Just lost 7 strokes putting, dialed with the irons, crushing it with the driver. It's a little bit wacky enough, but I'm going to take Spieth this week. Good luck me. Okay. Who's my favorite long shot this week? Here's a number of Brian, what's up, man? That I got earlier today. I'm not sure this is readily available, but let me check. It is 150-1 in a shortened field. Man, I kind of like Matthew Pavon. Mitu Pavon, I think is how my boy Byron pronounces it. I'm going to take him this week, and I think that there's good reason to be optimistic. It is a large, large price, right? But you look at his finishes this year, and it's not a player that warrants 150 to 1 price tag in a shortened field. Sony, a very short positional plotters type golf course. Pavon finished T7. The Farmers ain't this type of golf course, but it does have the thick sort of greenside rough and difficult bunkers. But I'm not going to discount and not mention that he won that big time event. Third at Pebble Beach, which is a short course, obviously a shortened event. But this guy went T12 at the Masters and then 5th at the US Open. Seems to have a very, very smooth, saucy, repeatable swing. And just played in the final pairing with Bryson DeChambeau. And here's something you may not forget. They both shot the same score on Sunday. Pavon was better on approach than Bryson. He was a better putter than Bryson. Nearly dead even off the tee with Bryson. And that's in the middle of playing in the final pairing of a major championship with that circus that was going around Bryson DeChambeau that week. Pretty incredible that Pavon was able to shoot +1, which was the same score ultimately that won DeChambeau the U.S. Open. Got to give him some credit this week. And look at the players he's around with 150 to 1. I mean, Hughes, Svensson, Thorbjornsen, Dunlap. Thorbjornsen making his debut. Absolutely keep an eye on him. But you give me a guy that just finished in the top 12 at 2 majors and has won an event this year. A couple other finishes that were great at signature events, including a win. I'll take that number. That's my favorite long shot this week. The full long shots will be out tomorrow on the Rotoballer video. I appreciate you guys for checking that out. As always, remember, Lines is the promo code. You want to sign up for a weekly, a monthly, an annual, a daily. I'm sure they'll do it. Rotoballer, we all want you to be a part of the team. Okay. Let me get into a little, speaking of Rotoballer, the Rotoballer PGA show with Byron Spencer. They have a guest. It's going live in like 6 minutes here. I got to get off the air. But let me just talk briefly about final thoughts because I had some tweets. I'm not a deleter, all right? My gut reaction was it was extremely soft for Rory to withdraw from this event. And I was annoyed that he didn't stick around, not so much for the presser, but to shake Bryson's hand after. But the more I think about it, I don't necessarily blame him. The nature of professional golf, is just different than other sports. It confides in the individualistic, sort of meritocracy that gives us moments of triumph and unimaginable individual joy, but also individual heartbreak that isn't easily diluted by pushing some of that off on teammates or coaches, like you'll see probably from the Mavericks tonight when Luka fails. He's going to sit up there with teammates. He's going to have other people that share in that misery. Rory doesn't have that. It's been 10 years, carries basically the weight of the sport, both good and bad at times, like a backpack full of baggage that is permanently adhered to his shoulders, it feels like at this point. And sure, I've been critical of his flip-flopping, but I'm going to allow him the grace to change his mind, just like I've sort of changed my mind a little bit on this. I was there when fellow stars at the Players on the PGA Tour basically called him out for cheating, right? While leading that tournament that really hurt him. The same people called him out earlier in the season and just besmirched his attempt to give some words of wisdom about the future of the game. He just had defeat snatched from the jaws of victory. That's hard to deal with. Now, he's basically in the final round trying to track down a Titan who has somehow flipped the crowd narrative from heel to superstar faster than Steve Austin, like an intentional villain who flipped the script so hard that he's now the most likable person in professional golf. And that's who he's got to go against. Not to mention, he's toe-to-toe in a pairing with a guy that basically wouldn't let him back on the policy board that he doesn't like. So he has a lot going on around him. The other thing about Bryson that mentally may be a little bit weird is, Rory's superpower, like if we're going to think of these dudes as um superheroes, like his distance and power was something that like is his weapon, right? That's his flying ability of Superman. Bryson basically took that weapon and juiced it up times two, like turned the volume all the way up. So he took his superhuman ability and then did it better than him. He's got a lot to deal with, guys. And, I did he blow it? Yeah, pretty much. But let's take a deep breath. And, like, I even too owe him a little bit of empathy and appreciation rather than ridiculing him one day later. Did he get out of town? Yeah, I would have done the same thing 100 out of 100 times. The camera with a red light blinking right at you in the scoring room, no, you know exactly that it's looking at you, and they're cutting to that because you can see the feed. You can see yourself watching the TV screen while watching it and knowing that you just blew it. And then Bryson gets up and down right in front of you, and that camera's looking right at you. You want to escape all of it. Every set of eyes and television in the press room and the locker room, is judging you. Get me out of there. I feel for Rory today. He'll be back. I'm reminded, like I talked to Tom about DJ. I'm reminded of Tiger. I'm reminded of Rory after the Masters collapse. I wish he would have played this week. I think it would have been easier for him than sitting in it for another couple weeks, but that's up to him. And time and talent tend to heal all wounds in sports, often ultimately make that redemption act much sweeter. This is taking nothing, and I mean nothing, away from Bryson DeChambeau. Unbelievable performance. You won that tournament, sir. You are a show. You are the needle mover, and I hope that you, Bryson, are the catalyst that gets these players back together playing more regularly. He's just human. Love Rory. Aren't we all, Casey? I hope that you all have a great week. Good luck at the Travelers Championship. I promise you we're going to hit a winner soon. Thanks for checking out Preferred Lines. A like, a subscribe on the way out would mean the world to me. Tell a friend about this show if you really love it. I enjoyed having you guys and Tom Lippard along with me tonight. I'll catch you next week. I'm out of here. Peace.